Welcome to the Real Texas Radio Podcast with your host, Bronin. Thank you for tuning in once again, or if you are joining the show for the first time, 1,000 welcomes. I've got a special episode planned today. I've got a guest, Joe Rivas, a former candidate for Dallas City Council and Police Oversight Committee member. So I'm very excited to have this discussion with Joe. And before we get into that discussion, if you haven't already, please make sure to like, subscribe, follow from wherever you stream the Real Texas Radio Podcast. And of course, you can follow the show on X at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. All right, now, you're listening to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Bronin, just a fed-up taxpayer bringing you all of your Texas, local, and national news. Mr. Joe Rivas, thank you so much for joining me on the Real Texas Radio Podcast today. I'm really excited for this discussion about the situation with the Dallas police. And before we jump in, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us why you're qualified for this discussion above a lot of other Dallas citizens.
Yeah, so my name is Jose Rivas. I go by Joe. Bronin, first, thank you for asking me to come on your show today. I appreciate it. I'm a former, I ran for Dallas City Council during the last election, and it was an eye-opening experience. Had a great time doing it. We were unsuccessful, and that's okay. A lot of first efforts are, but that doesn't discourage us, and it doesn't dissuade us from continuing to run for office to make a difference in our communities, right? I served as the vice chair of the Community Police Oversight Board for about 5 years. And I was appointed by the council member that I ran against. And I just saw he and I just were not on the same page. And I saw that my participation on that board was actually, probably assisting him more than it was hurting him. So I'm here to right the ship to a certain degree, and we need to get this city moving. Not only for its residents, our residents need to be heard. Our residents need to be protected from high crime and homicides. And so I'm just here to talk about whatever you want to talk about today.
Yes.
Thank you for the invite.
Something that I've really been thinking about, and I've really been digging into just police numbers around the state, around the country, and the Dallas Police Department. I think we have about 3,300 officers in the 3,400 officer range, which is higher than the Dallas police staffing has been in years. And I think that a lot of the credit can go to Prop U, the ballot initiative that passed back in the November 2024 election, which essentially compelled the city of Dallas to hire more police. And the target is 4,000. And obviously we're short of that, but I also understand how difficult it is to hire police in any city in this environment after 2020 and the defund the police movement. And so you mentioned, we know that you ran against Adam Basildua, sitting council member, District 7. He has been particularly critical of hiring more police, questioning whether that's actually a good move. And one city that I've looked at, San Antonio, right, kind of a peer city for Dallas, right? It has a bigger population, like 1.5 million, as opposed to Dallas in the 1.3 million range. They have a lot fewer police officers, I think in like the 2,500, 2,600 range. The response times seem to be better there in San Antonio with fewer police than we have in Dallas. And it can be hard trying to pull precise figures for response times. But I think for priority one response times in Dallas, it's in the like 11 to 15-minute range.
I don't. So one of the things that when we try to compare cities, it's easy. It's kind of easy to do it whenever you're looking at just flat numbers, right?
Right.
1.3 versus 1.5 or 1.6. Or number of officers there versus the number of officers here. One of I What we don't know though is the variable about um
Right.
management. Management, right? I don't think it's a question I don't think it's a question of leadership, right? I mean, it could be, but I haven't heard that from um, any of the officers or whatnot. So I think it leads me to believe that what Dallas may be suffering from is probably a lack of management, a failure to a certain
Do
degree
you mean like
management.
electeds, or do
Um,
you mean the
on that
police management, or combination?
Yeah, so I don't think it's police management, okay? The 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 chief of police works for the city manager and of course there's an
Right.
assistant city manager that he answers to as well, right? So it's the management is that I'm speaking of is from the city,
Right.
the city civilian side, right? And the elected, right? Because there's a majority of that council who have gone all in on on what on what they wanted to do. Initially was defund, right? And we're still kind of recuperating from that a little bit. And the chief is doing what he can to raise the levels. And as you saw when he did hire all of these people, um,
Yes,
the
some of
city
them did.
electeds got angry. Some of them. Right? They got that that we went over our target limit, or we met our target. I've so I think it's pressure from the electeds to city management and vice versa. It's the ideology that maybe some of the city management subscribes to that is also um, in alignment with what the majority of the city electeds want, which is probably lower enforcement, which is why we have so many police officers, but so what appears just out here on the streets, just driving the neighborhoods, um, watching um, watching police officers as they as they do their normal routine throughout the city. I see a lot more response to whatever requires them to do the red and blues, which is typically what a Pride one. So I see response to that, but I'm not really we're not really seeing much on the streets as far as enforcement, whether that's traffic enforcement or whether that's engaging with the homeless community or that kind of thing. So when you have a lack of enforcement or a perceived lack of enforcement, then to me that kind of gives the green light for
Yes,
things to kind
yes,
of remain
and
the same and not get any better,
yes, and I think you. Oh,
right?
go ahead.
So I'm sorry. I realize, I mean, the chief is in a tough spot. The officers are in a tough spot. But it's not just city management and our city electeds. It also goes to our county level, right? So if we have at the county level, um, you know, our law enforcement personnel there, um,
Hmm.
specifically at the our judges and our and attorney that aren't prosecuting or are releasing people that maybe have violent crimes or whatnot. Um,
Right. right.
It's not going to get any
And
better.
yeah, that's what I always think about too. Police, ordinary patrolmen and police, like they're employees, and they're reporting to their superiors. They're following policy. That's all they can do. They can arrest, but and go ahead, throw whoever in jail. But then from there, it is up to the county. It's the DA. It's the judges. So that's all police can really do. And
Right.
do you know? I'm glad you brought up the point about there's so many factors. Like I compared San Antonio and Dallas, but obviously every city is unique, and it probably is a management factor there. Why maybe response times are possibly lower in San Antonio with a smaller force. I was pulling the overtime numbers for Dallas police, and that has increased like since 2013. It's shot way up. I think it's in the like 50 to 60 million bucks a year range now. And back in 2013, it was like 10, 11 million dollars.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it suggests to me if you have to tap so much overtime, then you don't have enough staffing, or operationally, you're not scheduling staffing in an appropriate way. Right.
Yeah. Again, right. So like
Right.
um, a management problem. And, you know, w- on the assignment of officers, that's up to the chief and his deputies, his division commanders to hash all that out
Right.
on what the priority is, right? Um, Considering all of the things that we're talking about, whether it's you know the open air drug use or the homeless problems or the vandalism or the murders or homicides, I don't know that prioritizing um, officers at, for example, and this is this is easy only because it just happened so recently. Prioritizing officers to send them to block off a
Oh
street
boy.
because of Christmas
Oh
lights
boy.
is, I mean, we've got much bigger issues than that, right? So, were some of those officers off duty? I don't know. Was this off duty employment for them? It could have been. But to me, if you are wearing the Dallas police officer's uniform and using a Dallas police officer vehicle, then you're on duty. There's there needs to be a
Right.
separation
Right.
of who's on duty, who's not on duty, right? And so I'm all for off duty employment, right? Go do your off duty employment, but using official city resources to do that, um, I don't know that that's maybe the right thing to be doing because it
Right.
kind of misleads the public, right? And if they're concerned about a perception problem, then what I'm saying is the fact that they're in off-duty uniform or in an off-duty capacity, not wearing their DPD uniform and not using a DPD patrol vehicle, that
Yes,
would tell me
and
they're off duty.
just for anybody listening in who hasn't followed that story, we're referring to in Preston Hollow over the Christmas season. There was a mansion that goes all out on Christmas decorations in a very wealthy enclave in Dallas, and it received a ton of social media attention. And the councilwoman for that district, she was able to organize basically a blockade for vehicles and, at least for some of the time, it seems pedestrians as well, to prevent access to that area. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's like, if that level of attention was paid to downtown Dallas, then maybe AT&T wouldn't be packing up its bags and moving to Plano. It seems like downtown, at least for the last 5 or 6 years, has gotten a good leaving alone when it comes to. I think like the panhandling and the homelessness is really the issue plaguing downtown.
So I just drove through downtown 2 days ago. Drove up, I believe, Commerce, and here's another. I mean, here's another very very simple example, but not to pick on the council
Go
member
for
up
it.
in with the Christmas deal. Um, yeah. The thing is that here's another example is as I was driving through downtown and I'm coming up, I see a homeless person sitting on the sidewalk with all their stuff spread out in front of them, and people, just kind of walking by, and I'm like, this is. I think it was like a block from the
The
AT&T,
Discovery Zone.
that little plaza thing they have. Yeah, so it wasn't very far from that, but they were also it appeared that there was a filming
Could have been.
of a TV show or maybe a movie or something was going on in town because again, DPD, they were using a DPD officer to block the street. Now, I don't know if that
Right.
DPD officer was on duty. I mean, he's doing his job, right? Uh, but is that I mean, should that be an off-duty employment kind of thing? Right? So, and if it was, great. But if I see you in a DPD
Right.
officer's uniform, I'm
Right.
thinking you're doing DPD work, right? And they do use it for that. They use it at the fair too, right? I mean, we have our DPD
Yes.
officers doing traffic control at the fair and at American Airlines Center and thing like that, and that's great. But are those off duty or are those on duty? And again, it's hard to tell because everybody's in uniform. So that
Right. Right.
automatically tells me
But
you're on
then
duty.
if I guess it's also a signaling piece as well. Even if you're off duty and you're not wearing a police uniform, you know, then what does that signal to the public, right? If the purpose of that is, I guess, security.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm okay. I'm okay if they're not, I guess I'm not saying they can't be recognized as police. I mean,
Right.
everybody's got like windbreakers that say police, just generic police, that could identify the fact that yes, this guy is a police officer, not security, right? Because a lot of people, some of our, some of the people that cause problems around, it doesn't matter whether it's police or security around, but if they see someone that's wearing security, they
Right.
assume automatically
Right.
that they're not police, and that's not the case. They should identify themselves as, as a police officer, but I would just like to see, and and I don't know if any, you know, I don't know who on council would agree with that or not, but I just kind of look at it as a
Yes.
kind of like a truth in advertising kind of thing, right? Like, who are you, and are you working on like a city matter, like a city
Okay.
priority, or are you working off duty employment? Is all
Okay.
is
And
what I'm
you
trying
know
to
what? On that note,
figure out.
something I bring up on the show a lot are like Clyde Warren Park, which is considered one of the biggest downtown success stories of the last several years. And sometimes I'll walk down there, or if
Sure.
I drive by on the weekends. I love to see how busy it is. It's such an active space, and the Discovery Zone, the AT&T Discovery Zone, which I hope that is still going to continue even without AT&T there. But neither of those two spaces would be a success if they didn't have private security. And I don't know, is it AT&T who pays for that security, or if it's a shared cost with the city? And then Clyde Warren has a separate security team, and definitely civilian over there. But I
Yeah.
think I've seen like the park acreage in downtown has increased to like 20 acres over the last few years. You wouldn't sit in most of those parks for 5 minutes and open a book. You just be harassed or panhandled, or and like, do we want? It doesn't
Yeah.
seem practical. You're going to use a full-time officer to just be patrolling a park. I'm sure those civilian security are paid less, but that seems to be an important piece of the puzzle here for a downtown area.
Yeah, so I've taken my granddaughter, my son's taken my granddaughters to Clyde Warren, and they have a great time every time they go out there, and they've never had any problems with anything. And my wife and I have
Right.
taken our granddaughters to the Discovery Zone. They've wanted to go out there, and they get to each choose whatever it is they want to eat. They can be picky. And we've sat outside, let them play in the courtyard there, uh, and they've had a great time. So I haven't had any problems at Discovery Center, but as I drive by, I can see a lot of homeless and panhandling, and people walking. Some of these folks
Yes.
walking around yelling at themselves, or just yelling at society in general. I don't know if that's drug induced. I don't know if that's mental illness or a little bit of both. But we really, really need our county to kind of step in and start taking a more proactive role in helping the city find a reasonable solution to what's going on with the homeless and the panhandling
Oh, yeah.
and the mental health or drug
Absolutely,
problems
absolutely, and I know
down to.
there are many different theories about why AT&T is packing up and going to Plano. I've heard everything from it has nothing to do with Dallas. It has nothing to do with crime. Um, I don't see how that's possibly true. Dallas is suffering from what I would say just about every major city in America is suffering from, allowing homelessness to proliferate. And I think a lot of that has to do with if you have your county jail near downtown, as we do in Dallas, and if you are concentrating the services for homeless in downtown or nearby, as we do in Dallas, then you're going to have that problem. Unfortunately, I watch these county commissioners meetings, and the same nonprofits that go into Dallas City Hall and claim that they have solved homelessness, they have figured it out. At least they get some pushback from some of the counselors in Dallas, but they go into that the county commissioners court, and those commissioners, I mean, they're just fawning over these people and believe it, hook, line, and sinker. So I I don't know.
Okay. Well, I mean, that was one of the things that was one of the primary issues in my campaign this last go around was, we give these
Yeah,
nonprofits a lot of money, but I mean, I don't, I've never seen um, them come out and explain where all of that money is going. Is it staying internally for their salaries? How much of it is going to mental health? How much is going to substance abuse treatment? How much is going to housing? All of these things. And so I wanted to lift the rock on that and say, where are you spending our money before you get any more? Show me how you're using it. Show me how it's benefiting the residents of Dallas who are paying taxes
right.
to to fund you. Are we getting money's worth? Are we getting a return on the investment? And that's
Right.
really what it boils
And
down to. It's very, very simple for me.
I think it's a pretty clear no, especially, our biggest private sector employer is leaving downtown. Maybe not 100% because of the crime and homelessness. Maybe there's some validity to what they're saying. They just want a newer horizontal building, but it's just hard to believe that it's not a factor.
And like you said, it's partly probably homeless, crime, that kind of thing. Um, and probably desire for them to go to um,
Right.
a more flat campus model kind of thing. But at the end of the day, you know, it appears to me just by based on a lot of things that I've heard the council say, is that they want to be in an office tower. Now, whether that's AT&T or Bank of America, I don't know. But, it's a real estate. At the
Yeah,
end of the day, it's a real
and
estate.
you know what? I get the vibe that a lot of the city staff, don't want to be in that area. They want to be somewhere where it's easier to get lunch, apparently. And I'm not saying that's a reason why we need to demolish City Hall for that.
Yeah.
Um, it is a pretty sad area, other than City Hall. I mean, it'd be nice for it to be redeveloped. I know we're veering off course here from police, but in any case, I just wanted to ask you.
Yeah. Well,
um,
a lot of things.
um, I wanted to ask you. I know that council elections, they're not for nearly another 2 years now. Have anything you want to comment on your future in Dallas?
No, not really. I'm staying in touch with my neighbors. They're staying in touch with me. They're letting me know what's going on. We had a homeless encampment fire
Really?
over near White Rock Hills. Yeah, that was a few. What was that? That was a few months ago. But they called me and they were like, "Hey, we've been trying to get this homeless encampment out of here, and we've been telling them that they have
Yeah.
fires back here. Like they start small fires, but one got away from them, and it required the brush truck from DFR to go out there and put it out, and then they had a hot spot flared up again, so they had to take the brush truck back down there and make sure that it was real, all the way out. But it was I mean, they're staying in touch. We're I'm just keeping an eye on city things. I really don't I'm not I haven't been commenting too much on it because I like to read tea leaves, right? I like to see what the different council members are talking about.
Of course.
Even the ones that I disagree with, right? I want to hear what they're talking about. And uh, and I just want to make sure that when I'm looking at things, I'm looking at it from a resident perspective, right? I'm looking at it from a taxpayer perspective, um, and I want to make sure that our taxes aren't going to be going up because of poor decision making, whether that's a bad real estate deal or whether that's a bad real estate purchase, um, or not holding nonprofits accountable. I mean, the city loves to talk about transparency, but I don't see it happening. I mean, I don't. We should know where our money is being spent when it comes to nonprofits, particularly with the homeless, with the homeless nonprofits here. Um, One of the things I noticed today, getting back to a little bit of the police deal, I pulled up the crime, the city's crime workbook, and you can no longer sort um, by council district on murders and homicides. And it may be a glitch. It may be a glitch in the system right now, but the current map does not show it at all. And so I think we're going backwards on transparency. Um, but it's yet so now, if you want to know, just for the general public, if you want to know where your council district stands on homicide offenses, in particular, um, you're going to need to go to the Public Safety Committee website because the chief of police provides a crime briefing, and it's broken down by district. And so, like ending last year, I think we had 34 murders for the year
What
just
does
in
District
my
7 cover,
district,
just for
in
the
District 7.
listeners?
Um, so it's Fair Park, um, south, up into the Cedars a little bit. Um, a lot of it's Great Trinity Forest. It goes down into Joppy and the Great Trinity Forest. Comes into southeast Dallas across towards like Longview Station. incorporates my neighborhood of Parkdale, and then goes north up East Dallas, up Ferguson, to Oates, pretty much. It kind of starts jiggling around, goes east towards Eastfield. So it's a pretty large district, goes as far west as Bruton and Prairie Creek, if I'm not mistaken. So it has some
And
Pleasant Grove
34
in it as
murders
well.
in 2025 in that area.
And so it just, correct, 34
Wow.
in 2025. So, I'm not able to determine quickly at a glance like I used to be able to do with the crime workbook, because it would show you across the all the districts where everybody was at, right? So you could see D7 compared to D6, and now you're going to have to now they make you work for it. So that's the kind of transparency that
Agreed.
we shouldn't be going backwards on. But I understand it. It protects a narrative, that and it protects an elected. So I get it. It's 34 for last year. The year before that, it was 42. So it's 8 less, about 19% less. But think about it. I mean,
And
2024 was
one
42
council
murders.
district of what are there,
The-
14? And I'm from Boston originally.
Yeah,
I think Boston, the whole
correct.
city in a year has 70 murders, and obviously a much smaller population, like half the population of Dallas. But still, I mean, that's a lot.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when, people, it doesn't build trust when you lack transparency as a city government. It just doesn't. It makes you start to question a lot of other things. And
Yes.
so I think that's
Well,
fair.
Joe, thank you so much for coming on the show again. You're my first recurring guest, and I really appreciate it. And definitely hope to have you on again in the future.
Hey, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much.